Footy fans, welcome to the grand final edition of Centre Court. All thanks to Lapine Funerals, supporting women in sport for over 125 years. Shani Layton, how good is grand final week?
Oh, it's just the best, Bianca. It just gives me tingles because it reminds you of every time that you were a part of one, and just the joy, the media that you get around it, the excitement. Like, you never get that much love in your life, really. So, yeah, I still love it as much as I did when I was playing.
Yes, and you know what? This is the one time of year that makes me miss playing, is when you see the teams getting around each other, getting ready for the big game to come on Sunday. But before we get to that, let's talk about the preliminary final between the Swifts and the Vixens. We saw a complete opposite game from the Vixens to what they played against the Magpies in that first final. It was a huge 13-goal win to the Swifts. What did you make of it?
Oh, look, just a massively disappointing performance from the Vixens, unfortunately. But they played the same netball that they played against the Magpies the week when they lost, and they scored the same amount. That was the lowest score that they've ever scored in this competition, and now they've done it twice in 3 weeks. So I think that loss maybe fired them up enough for that second win against the Magpies in the semi-final. But yeah, they just didn't rock up on the day. They just didn't have that same passion and strength that they played with. But,
yes,
you know, to the Swifts' credit, they played amazing, and Bryony came out during the week and said, no one's taking us serious enough. They're not giving us the respect that we deserve, which is totally fair enough.
Yeah.
But I think everyone just expected the Vixens to come out and win after their performance the week before, especially if you were there live and you saw how intense and intent they were in the game plan that they put out. Oh,
and against Magpies, so the Vixens had a 20-9 first quarter. And then in the prelim against the Swifts, it was a 19-12 first quarter for the Swifts. So the games are being won in that first quarter. I hope that's not what happens in the grand final, because we don't want it to all be over in that first quarter. But both teams, I think the Lightning have had a week off. They probably needed the week off to rest up some of their more experienced bodies. But the Swifts now have at least got some momentum behind them.
Absolutely. What did you put the Vixens' performance down to?
Oh, to be honest, we're going to get to that later in the show.
Okay, cool.
I'm going to dissect it a little bit more.
All right. I want it now. I want your thoughts now.
No, Shani, just wait.
Okay.
Hold your horses. Let's get to the agenda for the week. All thanks to Lapine Funerals. The first one that I want to talk about is just that, in particular, there are players in teams that are the barometers, the ones that if they stand up, teams generally win. Laura Langman is one of those players for sure for the Lightning. Courtney Bruce, I believe, is that player for the Fever. When she stands up, when she's giving energy, she gains momentum for her team, and she is often the one that gets them the win.
Yes.
Now, the thing I want to be careful of, it's not about stats. So you can look at a stat sheet and a player might not have a huge amount of impact or might not see that they've played a bad game. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the way the player drives, how many times they offer to the ball, all that stuff that we don't actually record. So if we take a look at two other players that I think are really influential in their team, one being Tegan Phillip for the Vixens and Gretel Tippett for the Firebirds. Look at that photo, by the way, of Gretel.
I think she regretted that straight after. That's an open fact. She's not fighting that.
But with Tegan Phillip, this is a huge thing for me with the Vixens and how they play. Against the Magpies, Tegan was driving. There was 3 players to every single ball. There was an intensity about the way they played. She still had good stats. She ended up getting player of the match.
Unstoppable.
Unstoppable. But then on the weekend in the prelim, she's the one player that she didn't have a bad stat sheet, but she did go missing. And when she goes missing, the Vixens don't seem to be able to cover her. So when you ask me what I think about the Vixens and how they played, I think, unfortunately for them, because they were waiting on other players to stand up, because Tegan was being well defended by Sarah Clow and Maddie Turner.
Yeah, phenomenal.
There was nobody else there that was standing up in that space. So keep an eye out for the 2 players who are barometers of the teams in the grand final. So I think Laura Langman being one for Lightning, and who would you say would be the barometer of the Swifts?
For me, it's definitely Paige Hadley. When she stands up, when she's strong, she's the barometer. She has that energy to get them out there and doing their job, but when she goes quiet, then they miss that link in the centre to be able to obviously move it down the court. So she's definitely the main one for them.
Absolutely. All right, Shani, it's now time to hand the agenda over to you, all thanks to Lapine Funerals. What's on your agenda this week?
So on my agenda this week, I'm actually really excited about this one, Bianca, because it's very close to my heart. That Netball Australia during the week announced that they have put in place, or they're going to be putting in place, a full-time role for wellbeing, which is absolutely huge, because Angie Bain, who was in the role previously, was only signed up for 3 days a week, and it was part-time, 15 hours, and she didn't have enough time to be able to look after every player in the Diamonds, every player around Australia. And so the fact that they've done all these surveys, they've called up players individually. I know I talked to them individually to figure out what the problems are within netball at the moment, which every sport has. It's
yes,
not a
of
netball
course,
problem.
yeah.
So, you know, they're responding to the key priorities and the recommendations that we had to be able to put this person in place full time. So I'm looking forward to be able to see what they're able to do with this. But not only that, the thing that has encouraged me during the week is when April Brownlee announced that she was pregnant. And you might think, what is the link between this? But in netball becoming more professional, players weren't able to step away and have kids. So, you know, early days with Shelley O'Donnell and also Janine Illich,
Sherelle
McMahon could have kids and then come back. But there was this period of time whereas players were worried that if they stepped away, they wouldn't get back in the team.
Yeah.
So now I'm so happy to see that Laura Geitz, when it had babies, came back. Renee Ingles, and I know that you were a huge part of that maternity leave in the
policy that we had. So with the collective bargaining agreement, I think the Players Association have been really forceful. JP Blanthall being one of those. It's like, we need to set the standard for female sport, for female athletes, and make sure there's a maternity policy in place so that if a player decides to go and have a baby and start a family, that they're fully supported. And some of that includes that when they do come back to the sport, that for the first 12 months that they are able to travel with a support person, whoever that might be, so that the baby is looked after, they can play the game. And I'm really proud of our sport for putting their mark on it. And then now what we've seen is that all the other player associations across all the other female sports are going to the netball contract to have a look at what we have in place. So I think it's been it's a collective from all the players and all the administrators within our sport who I think have done a fantastic job in that.
Yep, so a huge reward and a very positive agenda for me today.
Well, I'm going to stay with you, Shani, because every single week you highlight for me a leader of the week. Now, I probably could guess this one.
Yes.
But I'm going to hand it over to you.
Because I have already mentioned her today, but my leader for the week is definitely Paige Hadley. And look, I'm going to put my hand up and say that I was wrong, and I wrote the Swifts off after seeing the Vixens the previous week, but they played phenomenal on the weekend, and a huge part of that was Paige Hadley. And like you were saying earlier, Bianca, what leadership is for me, it's not about the stats, but it's about how you get about your team. And she stands on that goal circle when her goalers are shooting, and she's like, "You've got this, you know, put it in." So they're not worried about the defenders. They hear that positivity, they put it in. And then she's down the other end on the defensive circle, like, "You can get the ball, get in front, you know, go base," and giving them that voice and energy. So even when the Vixens were fighting back in that third quarter, she was able to keep her team together, to give the energy and passion, because she is one that does have finals experience to keep them in the game. So congratulations, Paige Hadley. You are Shani Layton's leader of the week.
And another thing, when you talk about experience, is Katrina Rore, who also is a very experienced Swifts player. She said going into a grand final, that's one thing they need to work on and need to help the young girls that are in the Swifts team know how to play in a grand final. Let's take a listen.
Yeah, huge experience. I feel like counts for a lot when you get to this stage, and our team is full of players who've been in grand finals both at a World Cup and at the SSN level. And it's about us bringing through the rest of the team who haven't been there and getting them, you know, up to that level and wanting to be there, really like embracing it and I suppose enjoying the challenge and wanting to really get amongst it.
And I think Katrina Roy's only played just a handful of games for the Swifts, but she's found herself in a grand final, and she's certainly one person that you want on your team because she has played at many major events just for New Zealand, but also in grand finals.
Absolutely. And it's all about that winning mentality. Like you were saying earlier, it's about not going missing. It's knowing how to stand up. And a part of that is keeping your plays in the moment. And I tell you what, Paige Hadley has also been a part of grand finals in 2015 and 2016 when I was there also, where we lost against the Firebirds. So she doesn't love the stadium she's playing at, and I tell you what, she will be going in there for revenge and making sure that her players are up and about this weekend.
Ooh, the old Voodoo Stadium.
I know.
Do you know what I also like about Paige Hadley, just quickly?
Right. Yeah, go for it.
I love that she has a good sledge on the opposition players. She's
I know.
always... How do you have so much time as a centre to give all that feedback to your teammates, but also sledge the opposition while you're doing it?
I have no idea. I couldn't even do it in goalkeeper. I was puffing too much. But, you know, I wasn't sure about it at the start, but now I think you're protecting your teammates, you're getting around them, so good on you, Hadley.
And also just getting into the head of the opposition.
Yeah, get a bit of lip on this weekend.
All right, it's now time for the nitty-gritty, all thanks to Lexus of Berwick. Experience amazing with us. Shans, for me, my nitty-gritty this week is going to be all about recruiting season. And the reason I say this is because people don't realise that there's 4 teams, or now there's, 6 teams that are not playing finals anymore.
Yeah.
Those 6 teams are working very hard behind the scenes to secure their teams for next year. When you only have 10 players, it is tricky. One rule we brought into place was that you had to release the players that weren't contractors, so it had to be transparent from round 10. These are the players that really stand out to me that aren't signed yet. Sarah Clout, cross her off the list, she's already signed for the Swifts.
Yeah.
Chelsea Pittman, what is she going to do? Amy Parmenter had a breakout season this year. Maddie Brown, will she come back from her ACL? And then to note, Kumwenda, Thwaites and Phillip, all 3 of Vixen's goalers are not signed for next year. So it's a huge time for these clubs. They're not sitting back in their off-season. They are actually working really hard behind the scenes. And it is such an emotional, mental pressure, that isn't it, that you go through when you're a player that's unsigned. You don't know what's happening. You've moved clubs several times. And I don't mean that in a bad way.
No, I have,
You've had to go through playing for the Diamonds in this, international season, while you still don't know where you're going to live. You don't know what you're doing next year, and you're going through all of those negotiations.
Absolutely.
How hard is it?
It's so hard, because not only that, you're either living at home or you're living in a state that you've set yourself up in, and it's so much more to just netball in the life that you're living. And so, to make that decision to move, but then also to not know where you're going to move to. So, they might say have Perth and Sydney, but you're living in Adelaide, and then they both throw contracts at, or they might or might not throw contracts at you, and then one takes one off the table, and you have to move to Perth, but then you've only got 2 weeks to move there, before you've got to go to Diamonds. And so, these players are put under such duress, which is why it's so important that we do have a full-time wellbeing manager to be able to help them out during this time, because it's stressful, and clubs aren't talking to these players all the time, because sometimes they might want someone else, and then if they don't get that player, then they go to you as a last resort. And it's the hardest place to actually be in, emotionally, and especially as you are starting to get a little bit older, when you actually want to settle down and figure out what you want to do with your life as well. So it's a very tough time at the moment. I'm feeling for any players that are in that position.
Yes, absolutely. That was the nitty-gritty, all thanks to Lexus of Berwick. Experience amazing with our unique one-touch purchase. Visit lexusofberwick.com.au. Shans, we always finish the show each and every week with our Coach Says segment.
Yes, because we're great coaches.
We're great coaches. We're fully qualified to say all of this.
I have my intermediate coaching qualification.
Well, I've got half of my advanced. I haven't quite finished the rest of it yet. But my Coach Says for this week, I'm going to concentrate on Nolene Tarua from the Sunshine Coast Lightning. And I feel like I'm not really qualified enough to even tell Nolene what to do, because she's such a guru. She's such a gun.
Nolene, listen.
But the one thing that I really want to see is that somewhere within their game plan, they continue to take risks, because that's what worked for them all season. Make changes, be proactive with those changes. But get ready, because I think the Swifts might come out and try and tag Laura Langman.
Yeah.
They know she's the barometer player. They know they need to shut her down. So just be ready for all the other players of the Lightning. I think they all need to be encouraged to stand up and take the pressure off Langman, so it's not all on her.
Absolutely. And if I was then at Bryony, I would do exactly what you just said. I think tag her, keep her out of the game. But in saying that, you can't underestimate the workhorse of Laura Sherian and the amount that she lifts when Laura's not there. The other Laura, the Laura. But it's about what Swifts did really work on the weekend, is that they kept the ball out of that goal third, away from Caitlin Thwaites. So if they can do that, but they also need to consolidate in their third quarter, because they had a dip against the Vixens, but they got off to a good start. I don't believe they're going to be able to do that against the Lightning. So they will need to consolidate at halftime and make sure they have a strong third quarter if they're going to stay in the fight to win the grand final.
Ooh, it's getting exciting. It's all thanks to Lapine Funerals. Now, Shani, we need to get your tip. What is going to happen this Sunday? The game's on at 1 o'clock on Channel 9. What's going to happen?
I'm still going to back in the Lightning. I just think that they're so solid. They've got the finals experience. They've technically got a home grand final. It's Nolene's last year, and everything's going that way. In saying that, I won't be sad if New South Wales get the win, because obviously I still have a very soft spot for them. But, my head says Lightning, my heart says Swifts. So I think Lightning.
Just give me a scoreline. Lightning by how many?
I've said openly, I think Lightning will win by 8.
Wow. Well, I'm going Lightning by 9, because I think they're going to win quite convincingly, because they've been that convincing all year.
Absolutely.
Anyway, we'll be back. All thanks to Lapine Funerals, supporting women in sport for over 125 years. That's been Centre Court for another week, and we'll be back next week to wrap up the grand final.